This is the GSD podcast, and this is your host, Jeff Kushmerek.
First of all, Jeff, I'm a big fan. I love everything that you do, and I love your passion and your content and how supportive you are, like the CS community. So yeah, I'm so happy that we can connect.
I'm just thank God
I'm
recording
told
right
Chad
now.
yesterday when I saw him that you're a big ego guy and that he should stroke your ego a little bit to get it started.
I'm a big ego guy.
This is being recorded.
Yeah.
This will all be edited. I promise.
Yeah.
We are ready. But anyways, I'm here with Kristi and Chad. We have to start, like, we're just BSing way too much here. So we're here to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is forecasting, and essentially from green to red, what the fuck happened, right? Well, there will be a bleep put in there. So this is a topic that just absolutely kills me. And I was just perhaps with some adult beverages lamenting in person about this with Kristi. We started going way off on this, and then thank God there was no recording devices around. And then we decided to bring Chad in to kind of make sure that we don't go too off the rails here and everything. And so first of all, has this ever happened to any of you? Have you ever gone from green to red with any of your
Never.
as a CS leader?
Well, only once a week.
Yeah,
all the time.
Now, what do you think's the biggest reason for that, Kristi? Is it because for me, I look at usage, and if the usage is high, I just assume that they're going to renew.
Okay, well, you also know that usage has nothing to do with retention, right? So should we start there, or do you want me to answer the first question?
I think we should start with my hypothesis that if your usage is high, I've got nothing to worry about. I'm going to mark this as green and move on to the next customer.
Great. Okay, so can I share a little story? A little
stories
if I could. Okay, so I was once working at this company, and one of the CSMs on my team said, our customer has the highest usage, highest adoption of any other customer. Every single person who has a license, who's using it, they log in all the time. I cannot prioritize them right now. I have to go take a call with this customer. I'm really focused on project plans with these 1, 2, 3. They're all renewing right now. Well, this high usage, high adopting customer,
High paying customer.
high enough where it hurt,
Okay.
was using the platform so well to effectively offboard us and onboard themselves onto another solution. So usage did not decline because they needed to have something in place, but in parallel, they were onboarding a new product and then deprecated us. So we went from great usage to no usage and 0 in a day. So I will never be convinced ever, that usage and adoption is a key indicator of retention.
Oof.
Yes, I agree. It's one component.
Wow.
It's one of so many, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So my favorite thing is I don't, and Chad, I love your opinion on this. I don't like even using colors. Like green to red to me is half the problem right there, right? In my opinion, you need to run these things like sales forecasting, and they don't deal in colors. They deal in percentages, complete stage gates. Somebody's at my front door, and going from there. How do you run your forecasts?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I don't use green, yellow, red as the main component of the forecasting. So what we do in forecasting, usually with forecasting, if you look at like new deals and opportunities, they use, like a stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and we use that. But I use that just for, have we reached out to our customer? Have we, got, red lines back or whatever. I use the stages for that, but renewal probability is different. So I use a very simple renewal probability. It's a percentage, and 90 to 100%, they're going to renew. There's no question they're not going to renew. And in fact, a client could have a health score of red because they might churn in a year or two, and we know that there's a problem there. But right for this renewal, they're going to renew. And so it's 90 to 100%. Then I have a 50 to 90% there's a chance they may not renew for a particular reason. And then 0 to 50 is a red, and again, percentage, they're most likely not going to renew. So that's the typical approach. It's not too challenging, but there obviously are, intricacies in that process.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's Kristi, like if that's similar to you or.
Yeah, Kristi. Well,
Yeah,
what if they're on auto renew? Don't they just renew if they're on auto renew?
Yeah, everyone. So, and you're also not supposed to let them know that they're going to auto renew. You can notify them 29 days before the renewal. So just shy of that 30. So ironically, I did work for a company where the auto renew was like their secret weapon, which was the most uncomfortable thing as a CSM. I promised myself that when I became a grown up and I became my very own leader and I could build my very own processes around customer success and renewal management, I would never, ever do that, because the aftermath of forcing a customer to do something that they don't want to do is horrible. It's a horrible experience for them. It's a horrible experience for you. You're throwing resources at this company in hopes to save it. So if you just think about like what's involved from a resource and capacity plan, I mean, it's just nobody wins. So no, I do not do that. Our team actually, we notify we have some initial automation that goes out to our customers 125 days before the renewal. That lets them know that we are about to enter the renewal window, which starts at 120 for us formally. So 125, they get an email and it does walk them through, like, here's all the information you're going to need to know to initiate this conversation with your CSM, who'll be reaching out in a few days. One of the first bullet points we have though is if your contract includes an auto renew, and we encourage you to go look at that, you must notify us in writing at least 30 days prior to your renewal date of your intention to not renew, right? And every communication we have with our customer, if there's an auto renew, we make sure that not only are we saying it on calls with them, that we are putting it in writing. And I know that, like, listen, maybe I'm pushing it too much, but I don't want them to ever feel trapped or tricked or be in a situation that they don't want to be in, that's not going to make them successful, that they can't afford. Like, let's also be honest right now, with the economy the way it is, people are just trying to keep the business afloat. I don't want to lock somebody into something that's going to, like, I don't know, be the thing that they don't need when they need something else, can't afford it. So no, I will never do that with auto renews.
Oof. Wow.
Yeah, I agree with Kristi there. I mean, we set up different processes based on the segment the customer's in, but we make it really clear. It's like, hey, you're going to auto renew at these terms, so you need to let us know. Like, are you going to reduce, or do you want to have a further discussion around this? And with our larger enterprise customers, we look to set up a meeting and we kind of have that discussion, and we make sure we get all of our eggs in a row, or eggs, whatever the expression is. To make sure that
we're getting the ducks in a row. We'll save the eggs for later, Chad.
That's right.
You count your eggs after the ducks.
Ducks have eggs, so.
Oh, you're right.
They do.
Yeah. So Chad, I like kind of some of that, but my problem is that I form these really great bonds and relationships with my customer. I get really uncomfortable talking about financial stuff with them. And so I'd prefer just to kind of let the auto renew slide and not have any conflict between our relationship.
I mean, it's not up to you. I mean, the customer is going to dictate whatever it is that they do. And what I found, again, like the larger customers, if you don't like doing this, you're going to hate talking to procurement. And I think what I've seen, I've talked to a number of different businesses in the last few months, and what we're seeing is that the whole purchase process is consolidating into, either they're getting an external vendor to do some of these negotiations, or it's going right up to the CFO, procurement. It's no longer that original buyer that's allowed to make a certain decision. And whatever that number was, let's say they can make a decision of like 15,000, 20,000. It's like, either getting lower than that, like in terms of what they can actually approve. But yeah, if you don't like that, you're in the wrong profession, or you should look for a company that maybe will allow you to do that. But a lot of those companies, those CS teams are being let go because the less tied to revenue, the more your position is potentially at risk, depending on what the leader did to make sure that they proved value within your team. So probably another whole discussion there. But I would say that the overall theme is that customer success is under attack right now. And these processes like forecasting, if you don't have your forecast together, you're done as a CS leader.
Yeah.
You cannot have greens go to red.
Yeah, let's talk about forecasting in a minute, but I know Kristi had an opinion on the relationship aspect of things, right? Like,
I mean, I have opinions about everything, Jeff. What about the opinion about not being able to have a conversation with somebody? Because
it's like we met at like the farmer's market at the kombucha stand.
So like, let's be honest. I can have the strongest and best relationships with anybody, right? At the end of the day, though, we are in a commercial relationship, right? That doesn't mean that I don't like you, that we're not friends, that I don't want you to succeed. But our relationship, the primary basis of it is tied to a contract, which has dollars involved. And I always make sure that it's very clear. And I talk about this all the time. Kickoff to the renewal process, doesn't matter. We're in a commercial relationship. My job is to help you achieve your goals, because if you do that, you will stay and grow with us. That is my objective, and that is your objective. Are we clear that we both have these are our goals? Great. You can't shy away from these conversations. And if you're a CSM who doesn't know how to do this, go ask your manager. Someone needs to get you trained, because you cannot avoid it. Avoidance is only going to cause risk for your business and risk for you as a professional. So to Chad's point, if you want to know the fastest way to get fired, avoid having the tough conversations.
Yeah, the other thing I'd say is that, it shouldn't be that challenging. Like, you should have a renewal playbook that has several options in terms of, here's things that I can do to help you. If you get into a renewal negotiation, which you will, first of all, it should be really clear in terms of how you approach the renewal, how you're showing value, how you're selling future value in terms of maybe product roadmap. Here are things that you can do that will actually achieve additional value. Here's what you've achieved already. And then, beyond that, once you've sold that value and you've established relationships with the right people, then if you get into the negotiations, there's only certain levers that you actually have. And at the end of the day, the CSM's like, here, this is what I can do. You're asking me to do that? No, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And then, like Kristi said, you bring in your manager to help, potentially, do some finessing on the negotiation side, but it shouldn't be, all that crazy. Now, in this past year, I've seen crazy. I've seen things I've never seen in my entire life in terms of negotiating. But there should be a basic playbook that you're working with. And I agree, for some CS professionals, it does become very challenging when you don't have that playbook, and also when you haven't been adequately trained and you're not necessarily set up for success, where there's a definitive process on what you should do. That is where the CS leader needs to play a strong role and make sure that that's been established.
Yeah, I love it. But my problem, though, Kristi, I'd love your opinion on this, is that, when I get together with the CS team every week, we're going through all these, support tickets and problems that my customers are solving. We never have time to even talk about forecasting.
Well, then you need to book a separate meeting. I don't know what to tell you. You need to if you're the leader and this is where you're spending your time, you need to prioritize what matters, right? And I always tell my team, which I have to lead by example, prioritize with impact in mind. If I know that right now what I have to get to is the forecast because we have to run this business so we can survive another day in this economy, guess what? We're having conversations about the forecast. And I will tell you that the meetings I run are very uncomfortable. And it's not because I don't love my team and trust them that they're doing the right things, but it's my job as a leader to find the things that we're not doing, to make sure that there are no surprises. So while they might feel like we're in a good place and we've had a great conversation with the director, I want to know why the VP hasn't been involved. And I want to know, are they the influencer? Are they decision maker? Like, I'm going to ask the tough questions. I'll follow MedPick, or we can do whatever philosophy methodology you want to do. We're going to follow one of them. I prefer MedPick. And we're going to go through that just to make sure that we're checking all the boxes across the board. Because to Chad's point, listen, I have seen green customers leave and red customers stay. And so we cannot make the basis of our forecast around money tied to how our customers feel about us, because I don't care. You can hate me today and renew tomorrow, and I'll worry the next day about how to make you like me again. But for right now, right, the focus is, how do we make sure that our customers are in a position to make the decision to continue to work with us?
I think, there are ways that you can show a little bit more empathy and caring to customers in this process. So one of the things is, first of all, understanding what their budget cycle is and kind of how that works. And, for the larger customers, like, you can't do this for every customer, but just understanding that a little bit so that you can make sure you've tied these conversations around that. I think the other thing that tends to throw wrenches in things is that when you have, price increases, or you have, just additional costs that maybe they didn't anticipate, maybe you have a usage-based pricing, and, maybe there's certain spikes that are going to happen in their business. And so, as an example, so I had a customer where I knew that they're going to expand into another area. It's going to cost them more because they're going to use a new part of our product. And so what I tried to do there is, knowing their business, that there's challenges in other parts, and knowing the entire relationship, that we've had, a bit of a challenge in terms of just getting them onboarded.
Yep.
I try to make sure I've smoothed over those different pieces so that they are going to be paying more. We're doing right by our business and where our products are going. But maybe making that price increase gradual or something to that effect. So there's definitely those different components. And again, this goes back to the playbook, back to the levers and things
Yep.
like that. But yeah, as Kristi said, it's like, show me the money, like, pay me essentially. Like, I've gone into these discussions like, oh, I have this procurement person and this person was like, you know what, great, but pay me, because, if not, and I don't like to get to this, I don't know what, Kristi, if you've done this before, but I don't want to get to the point where I'm going to turn you off. But I have gotten to some points where we've played this game of chicken and I've turned customers off. And when you're working with mission critical systems, it's extremely painful. But I've found that, so unfortunately, on the other side, the CFOs, they want to play chicken, and it's a dangerous, dangerous game. And again, like, that can really try the relationship that you have, and you don't want to get to that point. But there's only so many levers that you have.
Chad, were you the guy that threatened Jason Lemkin? Was that you?
No, I have not worked with Jason Lemkin professionally.
So you weren't the reason why he got on that panel and said what he said and wrote a blog about it? That wasn't you, Chad?
No, I read his blog post. So if I was maybe trying to promote my business, maybe that's what I would do, like try and screw over Jason Lemkin. But
I mean, you could take the credit for it, since it seems like no one else is raising their hand.
No,
wait, Jeff,
person's a national treasure. But yes, let's go back. And I just have to tell my wife, hold on 1 second. I'm not under duress. I'm okay. Sorry, my wife was worried that I was threatened by some of the aggressive language that was coming over the computer.
Oh, you stop it. Can I just say,
Canadian.
so Chad, you make an awesome point. So when you mentioned about managing to their customers' budget cycles, so I managed GE at one of the companies that we were with, and let me just tell you that they're not operating off of my 4-month budget cycle. So we would actually start working on the renewal a year in advance with their legal and procurement teams and all of this, because we had an ELA, so an enterprise license agreement. We were working with so many different parts of GE that to orchestrate that level of commercial contract, like, that was a beast. Like, that was someone's full-time job just to manage all the steps of that every single day. Now, I'm not saying that we're all working with every GE, but we're working with larger companies. And Chad, I think you hit it, right? The best thing we can do is really understand what our customers need to make informed decisions and to manage this process on their end. I think so oftentimes we are forcing our customers to do what we want them to do within the timelines that we need them to do it. Yes. I think if we pull them into that process, right, this is our way to demonstrate a little bit more empathy, but then also probably have a more favorable outcome for the business. Also, probably get ahead of risk.
Like, a great example of that is, there's going to be price increases. So get over it. Like, there's price increases. But, some of the levers that I would use were, well, listen, I have to increase your prices. You've been using X amount more. And the customer's like, listen, I don't have budget for that right now. Like, I can't pay for that. I'm like, listen, that's fine. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a few options. You can pay less, but it's going to be a lengthier agreement, or you can pay more, and it's going to be, you can sign for a year. And so I think that by giving them that flexibility, and then just saying, listen, like, you've used our support team X amount of time, like, you're wanting, this premium type of service, you can potentially go to a competitor, you will not get that.
Right.
But we've established a lot of things here, and here's what I'd like to do, but there's only so many things I can do to help you here. I mean, you want us to be around in the long run, and we want to provide you with that optimal service. So anyway, those are things that, again, preparing your team, have those right conversations. I do think, though, that one thing we haven't really talked about is we've been focusing on forecasting, we've been focusing on the renewal process, but if we back up, into the journey, and one of the things, Kristi, you had mentioned around, identifying, who the right players are. But one of the things that I learned, a while back, and I think this was from Ziv, was around evaluating that relationship that you have with those particular stakeholders. So, one of the things that we did, and I think this was really what saved us going into 2022, because I was noticing that we were getting price pressure from customers on some of those early renewals in 2022. Yeah. And so we started evaluating and creating account plans for clients over a certain size, and we would focus on what their business outcomes were, what were those success metrics they needed to achieve. And then we evaluated the stakeholders, and we evaluated, is the relationship strong? Is it sort of medium? Is it weak? And that's going to allow us, as part of those forecast meetings, to dive further and then determine, okay, what type of strategic engagement do we need to have with that customer? So A, we know what their business outcomes are, we're aligned there. And B, is that we know not only who the stakeholders are, but what relationship do we have with the stakeholders, and how do we create a firmer relationship with the stakeholders?
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure if that's
my big thing too, Chad, because as I always say, the relationship gets sold up here between the AE and then the champion gets pushed down to post sale. And then the relationship's happening here, right? So this person's not going back, whether it's the CSM or the ADR or whatever, whoever it is not communicating the value back to that champion. And what winds up happening is that there's a mid-year meeting and the CFO's like, you need to trim off like X amount of dollars. Are you using this, and that? If you haven't been telling them that, like, look, here's the value that you're getting, as Kristi would say, you're meeting your core outcomes, right? Your core objectives, right? And going from there, then they'll be like, yeah, I signed up for these guys. I'm not hearing from them. I don't know. Let's lose it and we'll figure it out later or something like that. Then you go back in at the 9-10 month mark and they're like, who are you? Like, I haven't heard from you. I lost the budget on you. So sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. I think what I get really frustrated about this is that what I'm hearing is that, well, CSMs can't do that. They can't elevate that conversation. They can't talk to decision makers. And I think that's a load of shit. I think that the problem is that, and sorry, I know you probably brought me on here for the the calm one.
No, we prefer you to be more riled up, Chad.
Okay,
bring the energy. Let's go, Chad.
Yes, the problem is that we're not equipping the CSMs to be able to have those conversations in a correct way, like in asking, what Bob London calls these disruptive questions, and really teaching them to not just ask them what their goals are, what keeps them up at night. Those things like, your executives who are going to be on a call, you're going to fall asleep. Yeah. They're going to shut off their video and they're just going to tune out. You have to ask them, questions that are really going to engage them, and so that you keep them, involved. And the other thing too, is I think it's been really hurting CS as a whole, is that we got used to working out of our home offices, working and just talking to our colleagues and texting and emailing, when you need to get out there and go visit your customers. COVID is over. And go visit your customers. I don't care if they're spread out and you can't get everybody into an office, but you have to build those relationships with customers of a certain size.
Never lost a customer I visited. It's a Jason Lumpkin quote.
Yes, I should have visited Jason Lumpkin.
So, Kristi, my fault with a lot of this is with the CS managers that can't drive their teams to be able to accurately predict and forecast.
Well, when you have a manager that doesn't know how to forecast, how can you expect to have CSMs that know how to forecast?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, everything stems from the top down. So we need to stop pointing fingers at our teams, kind of like what happened in that session you made me listen to. But yeah, we're blaming the frontline teams for their inability to do what we expect them to do. But let me tell you something. When we originally built out customer success years ago, right? Let's say 20 years ago, the idea and the premise of customer success was not to have these commercial conversations. So we've been building and fostering this profile of these right people to be strategic and be consultative and to be the value drivers. But when we decided to say, great, customer success will now also be responsible for the commercial motions and manage revenue, we never stopped to shift the profile or to focus on the proper training enablement that sales gets so that they know how to do their job. So we're training CSMs on how to have tough conversations and how to do a good business review. But who is training these teams on how to forecast, how to have tough conversations, how to negotiate effectively? Nobody is making that investment. So when these teams are seemingly not doing what they're supposed to be doing, it is not because of their willingness to do it. It is because they don't have the skills to do it. And it's either your job as the leader to hire the right people with the right skills or focus on developing those skills with your team.
So you're telling me, if I'm hearing this correct, that former school teacher that just switched careers is expected to be able to have those conversations?
Well, my favorite revenue conversations are with former kindergarten teachers. So
yeah. So one counterpoint to you there,
skills, right? Let's invest in them.
Yeah.
Well, one thing though, Kristi, I don't think it's just the skills. I think that the other thing is that it's also the time. And so, I think that, and especially now because, there's been a lot of layoffs and there's, even more thrusted on the CS organization. And I think what's really, really important is the CS leader make sure that they're assessing where their CSMs are spending time. Where are the time sucks? Do they need a really great CS platform? I know someone that works at one of those organizations that they could use that. Is there data in all sorts of different places? Can they not get access to that data? Are they doing support? Are they doing onboarding? So it's really, really important that you assess where that CSM is spending their time and either take things off their plate, fix the product, or just build and buy better tooling that they need. So you have to look at that aspect too, because I think that, if I'm a CSM and I'm listening to this, you're like, great, throw renewal responsibilities, but how the hell am I going to do that when I have all these other things I have to do and, our products, in the toilet and I've just got 30 more accounts put on my plate.
Yeah.
Chad, wait, no, Jeff. No, Jeff. Chad, I love that. And this goes back to everybody out there who's saying we need to do more with less. I literally want to physically hurt all these people because it's horrible. We should not be saying that. We need to do different with what we have. And so, Chad, to your point, right? Let's do a big assessment. Let's understand what the teams are doing right now. And if we don't have the bandwidth, if we don't have the resources, if we don't have the tools, if we don't have the people, fine, then shift them to what you need them to do to drive the business outcomes. Then Guess what? We're not having QBRs. Then guess what? We can't do weekly calls with these customers. You have to decide as a business, though, what you want to prioritize. But if you go to your team and you say, we're going to do more with less, you're insulting them.
Right. No, I'd prefer to re-tier your customers, put people down to different service levels.
And I don't add to this. I'm fine with removing, and it's funny because I wrote a post on this saying that CS should own, revenue, but I'm even fine with, that moving to sales, as long as the focus in CS and as a whole of the company is focusing on capturing business outcomes and making sure the customers deliver on them. I think that the thing that I'm seeing that, companies are selling the vision and they're like, yes, our product does X, Y, and Z, and we solve challenge, A, B, and C, and they sell it. And then they just look at adoption and it's like, oh, adoption's doing well, number of users purchased versus, used or whatever usage metric is X. And then they're like, oh, it goes red and churns. It's like, well, were you actually, making sure that once they purchased, you knew what the exact success metrics they're trying to achieve are? And again, so I'm, in some ways at this moment of time, because it's so crazy and renewals are so insane and upselling is so important, that responsibility that can go into sales potentially, but it's more so focusing on the outcomes rather than just doing the busy work of I got to do business reviews or I got to meet with my clients on a weekly basis. Great. They're still going to churn if you're not focusing on the right, important aspects around their business.
No, I agree. And I work with some companies that their salespeople are doing the renewals. They're working in this industry for many years. They know if they go to a new company, they want to maintain those contacts and things like that. And that's fine. Still compensate the CS team for doing the work that makes sure that when they hand it back over to the salesperson or the AE for the renewal, that the account's in good shape by doing all of these things. So they may not be having the actual
they have to show how they're impacting the bottom line. And again, it's not just based on activities. What are those things you're actually accomplishing, of part of those activities? And it could be, now usage could be an important part, but is it usage of those key items that you've demonstrated, through, data analysis that they actually create greater stickiness with your product? So it could be integrations with other systems. It could be certain automations. But again, it's not going to replace having those types of, important strategic conversations within the right period of time, not just 2 days before the renewal.
Yeah, I just shifted for the last topic right back to getting CS managers to be better about forecasting, and I'd love to hear Kristi's opinion on this. I think we probably do ours in the same sort of way. I learned the hard way. I was for 15 years sitting on every sales Monday morning pipe crawl because I was always on products that needed PS to get implemented. And so I was, bring whatever. Also, they weren't bringing CS into the conversation. And so I was there to be like, okay, we're going to jump in now and help with X, Y, and Z. Now, sometimes in those meetings, I wouldn't speak at all, right? But it was being in there. But I saw when people week to week over week would say, yeah, that deal's going to close. And then those deals wouldn't close. And then it's a brutal environment, right? But at the end of the day, you learn that I'm saying this activity is going to happen. I get questioned, then did you do this? Did you do this? Because just like our renewal processes, these sales processes are well thought out. Okay, well, did you find out when the procurement? Is there procurement? How long does it take to sign a deal? How's it? And those are the things that, of course, a CS, there's no training that is there for that, right? So people need to get this type of methodology in their place, and then they need to filter that down to their teams as well too.
Yeah. I mean, I've emulated much of my forecasting and renewal process and the commercial end of it from what I've learned from sales, to be very honest. And so I run it through, committed, pipeline, best case, risk, and churn. So it very much feels like that of the sales. And we do similar percentage forecasting too. So I've got 90, 70, 30, 10, and 0. So everything feels like, if you're used to hearing how the sales team ran their pipeline and their forecasts and probabilities, same thing here. And the numbers we would just adjust, right? So if I'm forecasting at best case and it's 30%, what I'm doing is I'm taking like 30% of that revenue and I'm kind of bucketing that in. But I know that week to week, I've got to pull levers, right? So I've got to figure out a way to get to my number. And so if I see something slipping, how am I making that up? Right? Because that's the other thing, is like, you have to have maniacal focus on those numbers. And if you have a target, that's your target. Your target doesn't move. So you've got to figure out what's happening beneath that and what are you going to do to get there.
And are you looking at a dollar number? Because I've seen some leaders be like, oh, we lost that 130K, so I'm going to gin up some type of upsell or something like that to this customer. So are you looking at it from the sort of...
Yeah, I'm looking at it the totality of revenue. Yeah. Right. So if I've got to get to an NRR of X, okay, like, where is their upsell? Where is this? Like, guess what? If that customer, if we didn't talk to them about how much lift there is, if we're going to do 4%, can we do 5%? Like, I mean, it's just trying to figure out, like, what can we negotiate to get us closer to that? Now, listen, we're not like sales in the sense that, like, we don't have this ability to just keep building in the pipeline. Like, we just can't keep taking leads and try to rush them through the process. We have what we have in front of us in terms of the renewals. So we can't generate new. But this is why forecasting is so critical, because you can't let these things slip.
You need to know these things early too. If you know you're going to have a down quarter, you have to prepare people for that instead of last minute coming in. That's a good way to get fired.
Listen, it's like, I have to work very closely with sales, because if I know that I have a heavy churned month or quarter, sales has to make that up.
Yeah.
Right. So my numbers and sales numbers are actually kind of work in partnership. Our numbers are not exclusively our own. We have a company number that we have to hit. So if I'm down, they've got to be up. And if they're down, I got to be up, right? So we've got to figure out, how are we building to that together? Now, that's the type of alignment, though. It would be really cool to see if we could figure out a way to do that all throughout sales and CS, is like have that tight of collaboration and not just on numbers, but like the spirit of the work that we do as well. But that alignment there helps. What's that, Chad?
Celebrations too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the target, like a dollar target, because it's not just, the manager keeping their team accountable and working towards that goal, but I know, as a CSM, I love it when there's a number that we're working towards, like there's a goal that we're working towards. And usually there's a longer term vision that you're working towards as well, but having those short term, mile markers that you're going to hit, that's helpful. And everyone feels a part of that, trying to get to that goal. And I think that does create, as you were saying, Kristi, better alignment with sales. But I also like to see another topic is around celebration, and how sales, it celebrates, certain wins, and a CS celebrates certain wins, and, really that being a unified, it's revenue, like, whether it's new revenue or the existing revenue, it's revenue, it's driving the business forward.
Yeah, let's not also forget that when you start getting up into the company's been around for a little longer, if sales has a 20 million number and they close it, that gets added to your book of business. You wind up in an upside down relationship where you've got more revenue or you've got more total dollars than the sales team does. And now you're like, you're the CRO? Like, I don't think so.
Yeah, our bag is bigger.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay, Kristi, your one quick tip, and then Chad's one quick tip.
Oof. One quick tip: do not assume that your customer health forecast is your renewal forecast. They are different metrics and they tell different stories. So just because your customer is green doesn't mean they're going to renew. And just because your customer is red doesn't mean they're going to churn.
Awesome. Chad?
Yeah, my tip is account planning. I think it's especially like for the larger, larger enterprise accounts, start that early, know what their outcomes are, know what the relationships are. And if you're a leader, get your teams to be doing those, and then question every item on there, and then have a playbook in terms of how do you attack when there's weak areas as part of that account plan.
Yeah, I was at a speech, I think it was somebody from Box or whatever, but they, obviously they're huge, so they can sort of the time to do some of this, but it was like in the first month you meet weekly, in the second month you meet twice a week, and then in the last month of the quarter you have daily stand-ups to go through all of these, everything. That's rigorous, but we've all been there where you're meeting on these things a lot, and it's frequent, you have to be in there, and then there's all the other work you have to do. So yeah, awesome. Well, I appreciate both of you. Thanks for allowing a Boston person to chat with two New York people. So I appreciate that.
We can be friends today.
Today.
Thanks, Jeff.
Today. Hold on one second, everybody. Thank you. And I will stop the recording. 1 second.